Warning, some histories shouldn't be told, but this one will be.
My name is Thomas Brennan. I've been living on an isolated property near Manteo, North Carolina, for about 3 years now. I bought this land at an absurdly low price, which should have been my first warning that something was wrong with this place. The nearest neighbors are miles away. At night, the silence here is heavy. It's not the kind of silence that soothes. It's the kind that presses on your ears, as if something were listening. 2 weeks ago, while digging the foundations for a new shed at the back of the property, my shovel hit something solid. It wasn't stone, it was glass. It took me almost an hour to fully unearth it. It was a thick glass bottle, the kind they don't make anymore, haven't for centuries. It was sealed with black wax, still intact despite the time. Inside, there was a rolled parchment. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. I don't know if it was excitement or fear, maybe both. The paper was old, stained, but the ink remained legible, as if it had been written yesterday. What I read in that letter changed everything I thought I knew about this place, and about what happened over 4 centuries ago. In the letter it said, "To whoever finds these words, may God have mercy on your soul, for now you carry the same burden I have carried. My name was William Ashford, carpenter of the Roanoke Colony, and I write this on my last day as a free man. It is the year 1590. 3 years have passed since our governor, John White, departed in search of provisions. 3 years since we were left alone in this cursed land. In the beginning we had hope. We planted, we built, we prayed. But the land here, it is not like other lands. There is something ancient here, something that was here before us, before the natives, before anything that walks on 2 legs. The signs began subtly, tools that would disappear during the night and reappear in impossible places, at the top of trees, buried deep where no one had left them. Food that would rot in hours, even the salted meat that should last months. Then came the sounds. At first, we thought it was the natives watching us, but the Croatoan, our allies, Manteo's people, were also frightened. They had a name for it, something in their language we couldn't pronounce. But when we insisted on knowing, the old shaman told us only one word we could understand: devourers. Eleanor Dare was the first to see them clearly. She had just put her daughter Virginia to sleep, the first English child born in the New World, our hope, our future, when she heard the baby laughing. But when she entered the cabin, Virginia was alone, laughing and extending her little hands toward the empty corner of the room. Eleanor swore she saw something there, not a form exactly, more like an absence of light, a space where her eyes couldn't focus, as if reality refused to exist at that point. George Howe was the first to disappear. He went out to fish for crabs at the river's edge and never returned. We found his body 2 days later. God forgive me, but what we found should not have been possible. George had been dead for days. That was obvious from the decomposition. But his body was still warm, and his eyes, open, glassy, were still moving, following each of us as we approached. The Croatoan shaman spat on the ground when he saw the body. He said George had been marked, that something had taken him, but not completely, that part of him was still trapped between 2 worlds.
We burned the body immediately.
After George, things worsened rapidly. More colonists began to disappear, first at intervals of weeks, then days, then Ananias Dare, Eleanor's husband, went out to fetch water and never returned. Margaret Lawrence disappeared from inside her own house, with the door locked from the inside. We found only her clothes perfectly folded on the bed. Those who remained began to change. They would wake in the middle of the night, sleepwalking toward the forest. We had to tie them down to keep them safe, but the ropes always broke. And the forest grew. Not naturally. Every morning the trees were closer to the palisade. We swore the tree line had advanced meters during the night, but that was impossible. Impossible. That's when the Croatoan shaman told us the truth. He was dying, a fever consumed him, and he knew he wouldn't survive the night. He told us this land was a threshold, a place where the world we know and another world, a place without light, without time, without death as we understand it. Touch. The ancients knew this. That's why they never built here. That's why they kept this place sacred, untouched. But we had built, planted, bled on this land, and that awakened something. The shaman said they came from a place between places. They were not spirits of the dead nor demons from Christian hell. They were something older, prior. They existed in the empty spaces, in shadows that shouldn't exist, in the silences between heartbeats. And now that they knew we were here, they were hungry. Only 47 of us remained when we made the decision. We couldn't fight what we couldn't see or understand. We couldn't flee to the sea. The boats had mysteriously rotted in a single night. Our only hope was the shaman's offer before he died, to join the Croatoan, to leave this place, move inland, to lands that were not thresholds. But there was a price. To break the connection with the devourers, we needed to leave everything behind. Every object, every structure, every trace of our presence. We should go as we were born, with nothing. And we needed a guardian, someone who would stay behind to complete the ritual, to seal the threshold again. I volunteered. It took 3 days to dismantle everything. The houses, the palisade, even the church. Every piece of wood was carefully removed and stacked. The Croatoan helped us, singing the whole time, ancient songs that made my bones vibrate. On the last night before departing, Eleanor Dare came to me. She was carrying little Virginia, now 3 years old. The child still smiled, oblivious to the horror around us. Eleanor cried. She thanked me. She forgave me for what I had to do. Then I carved the word as I was instructed. Croatoan, on the post that marked the center of the colony. It was a marker, a direction, but also a warning, a seal. They departed at dawn. 46 souls walking toward the interior, toward salvation, toward a life integrated with the Croatoan, where their names would be forgotten, but their lives preserved. I stayed. The shaman had taught me what to do. It was simple, but absolutely final. I needed to feed the threshold, give it something voluntary, something conscious, a soul that chose to stay, that chose to close the door from within. As I write this, I can already feel them around me, the devourers. They know what I'm about to do. They are eager. The air is cold, so cold I can see my breath, even though it's summer. The shadows move where there is no light to cast them. And there is a sound like 1,000 voices whispering in a language that was never human. But they cannot touch me. Not yet. The ritual protects me until it is completed. To whoever finds this letter, do not search for the disappeared of Roanoke. They are not lost. They were saved. But this land never forgets. The threshold is sealed, but not destroyed. It sleeps. It waits. If you build here, you will awaken it again. If you bleed this land, you will feed it. And when it awakens, the devourers will come again. I am not a wise man. I am not a brave man. I am just a carpenter who did what needed to be done. But I understand now what the ancients knew. There are places in this world that do not belong to us. Places where reality is thin, where other worlds bleed through. Roanoke is one of those places. And I will become part of the seal. My will, my choice, my sacrifice, they will keep the threshold closed for a time. The ink is running out. My hands tremble, not from fear, but from anticipation, acceptance. I no longer know. I can see them clearly now. They are not monsters as we imagined. They have no fixed form. They are absences, holes in reality, and they are infinitely patient. I will bury this letter tomorrow at dawn before completing the ritual. Perhaps it will never be found. Perhaps the land will devour it too. But I must try. I must leave a warning. If you are reading this, if you have built here, if you have bled this soil, may God protect you, because they already know you are here, and they are so hungry. William Ashford, Last Guardian of Roanoke, August 15th, 1590. P.S. If you see shadows where there should be no shadows, do not look directly at them. Do not feed them with your attention. And if you hear your name being called from the forest at night, do not answer. I finished reading the letter as the sun set. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was madness. It had to be. An elaborate forgery, perhaps. A macabre prank from the previous owner. But the paper was genuine. I sent a photo to a history professor from the local university. He confirmed. The writing style, the ink, the parchment itself, everything dated from the late 16th century. And then I began to notice things. The tools I left in the shed and found in impossible places in the morning. The food that rotted too quickly. The shadows that moved in the corners of my eyes. And the sounds at night. That first night after reading the letter, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old house felt deliberate. Every gust of wind against the window sounded like whispered warnings. Around 3 a.m. I heard it. My name. Thomas. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't my imagination playing tricks on an exhausted mind. It was a voice, if you could even call it that. Multiple voices speaking in perfect unison, layered on top of each other. Male and female, young and old, all at once. I remembered Ashford's warning, the final postscript. Do not answer. I stayed in bed, covers pulled up to my chin like a terrified child. I didn't answer. I didn't even look toward the window, though every instinct screamed at me to do so. The voice called 3 more times, each time closer, each time with more voices joining the chorus. The last time, it sounded like it was coming from just outside my bedroom door. Then, silence. The kind of silence that's worse than any sound. The kind that feels like something is holding its breath, waiting. The next morning, I tried to rationalize everything. Sleep deprivation, stress, the power of suggestion after reading that disturbing letter. I'm a rational man. I have a degree in civil engineering. I don't believe in ghosts or demons or whatever the hell Ashford was describing. But I needed to know more. I spent the entire day researching, not just the lost colony of Roanoke, everyone knows that story, the mysterious disappearance, the word Croatoan carved into a tree, the theories about assimilation with the native tribes. But I searched for the details Ashford mentioned, the Croatoan tribe and their shamanic traditions, the specific locations of the original settlement, the reports of strange occurrences in this area over the centuries. What I found made my blood run cold. This property, my property, sits almost exactly where historical records and archaeological surveys suggest the original Roanoke settlement stood. The coordinates match within 100 meters. The geological surveys show disturbed earth consistent with previous construction. Even the soil composition analysis indicates multiple periods of human habitation and abandonment. But here's what truly terrified me. Over the past 400 years, there have been 23 documented attempts to establish permanent settlements or homesteads on this exact plot of land. Every single one was abandoned within 3 years. The records are scattered across different archives, county records, historical societies. The pattern is there if you know to look for it. Homesteads built in 1642, 1701, 1789, 1834, 1891, 1923, 1967, 1994, all abandoned. The reasons given, when any were given at all, were vague. Family emergencies, undisclosed reasons, relocated for health concerns. Several were simply found empty one day with no forwarding address, no explanation. The previous owner, Richard Morrison, sold me this land for a fraction of its value. At the time, I thought I'd gotten incredibly lucky. Now, I found his obituary. He died 3 months after selling me the property. Suicide. He left a note that his sister shared with the local paper. It said only, "I'm sorry. I should have warned them. I should have stayed." I told myself I would leave, pack my essentials and go. Stay with a friend while I figured out what to do with the property, but where would I go? I'd sunk every penny I had into this place, my entire savings, my inheritance from my parents. And there was something else, something I'm ashamed to admit. Part of me didn't believe it. Part of me still thought this had to be some elaborate hoax or mass delusion or, I don't know, something explainable. So I stayed for a second night. I wish I hadn't. It started around midnight. Small sounds at first, footsteps on the porch, except they stopped before reaching the door. The sound of something, dragging fingernails along the outside walls. Slow, deliberate. Then I saw them. the shadows. You know how a shadow is cast, right? There's a light source, an object, and the shadow falls away from the light. Basic physics, basic reality. These shadows, they moved wrong. They moved independently. I watched one slide across my living room wall while the light source, my lamp, stayed perfectly still. It moved like liquid, like oil spreading across water, except it was moving upward, against gravity. And then it stopped, right in the center of the wall. And I swear to God, it turned to look at me. Not the wall, not the shadow, it. Whatever was creating the shadow from somewhere else, some other place, it turned its attention toward me. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. I could see my breath. My hands started to shake, not from fear, though I was terrified, but from the cold, from something else. Like every cell in my body was screaming at me to run. The shadow began to spread, growing, reaching across the wall toward where I was sitting. And as it grew, I could hear them. The whispers. Hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, all speaking in that same layered unison. They weren't saying my name this time. They were counting.
46, 45, 44.
I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, as if that would help, and pulled out all my research notes. There had to be something I missed, some detail in Ashford's letter, some clue in the historical records. 46. That number meant something. And then I remembered. Ashford wrote that 47 colonists remained when they made the decision to leave. 46 departed with the Croatoan. He stayed behind as the guardian. 46 souls saved, 1 soul sacrificed. The whispers outside my door continued counting down. 43, 42, 41. They were counting down to something, to someone, to me. 23 previous attempts to settle this land, 23 abandonments. But Morrison, the previous owner, he died. He didn't just leave, he killed himself 3 months after selling to me. What if he was supposed to be the guardian? What if by leaving, by selling, he broke some kind of cycle, left the threshold unsealed? And what if that meant the devourers were free to what? Take what was owed? 23 people who lived here and left. Who should have stayed? The counting reached 0 and then nothing. The whispers stopped. The cold receded. The shadow on my wall dissolved like it was never there. But I knew. This wasn't over. I left at first light, threw whatever I could grab into my car. I didn't care about the furniture, the renovations, the money I'd invested. Ashford was right. You have to leave with nothing that touched this land. But I couldn't just drive away and forget, because I realized something terrible. I'm not the only one who lives in the Roanoke area. There are towns here now. Manteo, Nag's Head, thousands of people living on or near that threshold land. What if it spreads? What if my presence here, my digging, my building, opened it wider? What if the devourers are waking up and it's my fault? This is the last night I spend in North Carolina. Tomorrow, I'm heading as far from here as I can get. But before I go, I need to do what Ashford tried to do over 4 centuries ago. I need to warn people. If you live in the Roanoke area, if you're thinking of buying land around Manteo, if you've already built there, pay attention. Pay attention to the shadows that move wrong, to the food that rots too fast, to the tools that appear in impossible places, to the silence that feels like it's listening, to the voices that call your name at night. And if you see shadows where there should be no shadows, if you hear in a language that was never human, if you feel cold in the summer heat, leave. Leave everything and go. Don't look back. Don't take anything with you that touched that land. Because the threshold isn't fully sealed anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe Ashford's sacrifice only bought us time, and that time is running out. The mystery of Roanoke was never about where the colonists went. It was about what they fled from, and about what still waits here. William Ashford thought his sacrifice would seal the threshold forever. But thresholds can't be closed permanently. They can only be contained, guarded, for a time. And I think that time has ended. The word Croatoan was never just a message. It was a warning, a seal, a prayer carved into wood by a desperate man who knew he was about to die. But prayers fade, wood rots, and seals break. There are thousands of people living in Roanoke now, families, children, all of them sleeping above that threshold, completely unaware of what lies beneath. And the devourers, they are so very, very hungry. 1587 to 1590. Some mysteries should never be solved. Some doors should never be opened. Some places must remain forgotten. But we never forget. We never stop building. We never heed the warnings. And they never stop waiting. Asterisk,